You know, what sort of issues could there be? What did they say at the time? You know, what do I already know walking in the door when they're going to come in for their interview? Because a lot of times, I got burned on this before. This is one of those learn as you go things. You do the interview, then you go back and review all the data, and you find out there's a whole bunch of stuff you wish you'd asked about. So I'd rather do the review first, then talk to them second. And it allows you to get caught up on a little more information about what you might want to ask about. You know, what issues are out there, what kind of things happen. One of these, I'm going to show you in a second, but one accident I worked on, I was listening to the tape of the controller working. Okay, so I'm just listening to his audio tape. And he's talking to this airplane, but he's talking to a lot of other airplanes too. And as he's banging along, he's, you know, talk, but he's misreading a lot of stuff. He's using the wrong call sign for airplanes, he's calling the wrong flight numbers, he's doing a bunch of stuff that just, I mean, anybody makes mistakes now and then. I did it too, everybody does. But this guy was like every third call was something wrong. You know, and I was starting to think, this guy's got like vision issues or something. I mean, because he can't read the data blocks. He's working radar. He's basically looking at about eighth of an inch type from about that far away. So if you've got any kind of glasses issues, you need to be wearing glasses because you're not going to read this stuff. Well, he's muffing up a lot of these call signs and he's really making a lot of mistakes. To the point that I got interested in, you know, has he got some kind of vision issue? So that was kind of on my list for things to talk to him about. Well, show you the, yeah, this kind of thing here. Listen to this, I reviewed the tape. This is just a few of them. I just put a few on the slide, but this is the kind of stuff that was going on.
Tell me when.
He calls, not yet. He calls Continental 876, it should have been 875. Citrus 654, he calls 657. You know, so there's a lot of this stuff where he's just not getting it right. So I kind of came to the conclusion that he's got maybe got a vision issue. So go ahead and, this is just a couple of samples.
Oh, that's
Nope,
wrong.
not that one.
Shoot.
Hit the play. Yeah, there you go.
That one?
Yellow 1424, climbing maintain level 360. Correction, level 424, climbing maintain level 360. Citrus 654, this is the maintain level 290. Yes, Citrus 667, this is the maintain level 290.
290, Citrus 657.
Houston.
William, can you work a release for Jetling 2858, department number 35?
Jelling 2808 is released direct San Antonio. Then the
2858, 2808, you know, 657, 654. It's got all these numbers wrong, and I was listening to this. So we brought him in for his interview, did the whole thing. About halfway through, the guy's about 45 years old. So about halfway through it, I said, you know, I was listening to your tape. Seemed to have a lot of vision issues. I mean, you're missing a lot of call signs and things. Have you ever had, like, you have any eye problems? You ever had your eyes checked? He goes, oh, well, you know, yeah, maybe you ought to do that. You know, it's kind of, yeah. And I said, well, you know, I'm about the same age, and, you know, your eyes start to go, distance vision, you know, nearsighted, that kind of stuff. You probably need to get them checked just to make sure. Yeah, I'll do that. Okay, well, this is the learn by burn part. So the next day, we go back and get all our documentation in. I get a copy of his medical. It's got a restriction on it for corrected lenses. So it's like, okay, get him back in here. So, you know, we brought him back in and said, what the heck? And he said, well, yeah, that day I forgot my glasses. I thought they were in the headset bin, but they weren't there. So he was working without his glasses. And I got his 23-year-old assistant controller in, because the story here was that the airplane ran through a hole in the weather. Well, there was no hole. So he ended up in a thunderstorm. So I got his 23-year-old assistant in there at Eyes Like an Eagle and basically said, so was there a hole in the weather there? He goes, no, man, there was no hole. So, you know, the guy ran an airplane through weather he apparently didn't see, couldn't read the call signs, it was bad. So the report said, working without his glasses. And I think that had something to do with it. But, you know, we wouldn't have fished that up if we hadn't gone and listened to the tape and kind of gone, yeah, there's something to talk about here. So it's important to do that prep before you get in there and read all that stuff and see if there's anything else you might need to ask about. Because otherwise, I would have never done it. You know, he's sitting right in front of me, he looked fine. That day he was wearing contacts. But, you know, I wouldn't have thought of even having that line of questioning without picking it up out of stuff like this. So that's kind of the end of that run through. Do you have any questions or anything? No? Okay, great.
Okay.
Want to do your Pelosi tape now?
Yeah, that sounds good. Your next video.
Aside from that, I meant more in terms of like okay, we are gonna set up a healthcare website that is an exchange, people are gonna come to it. Why is it so hard to get a company to execute that confidently?
I don't know. And as one who works very hard. No, and that's my question.
Well, let me get the House Minority Leader here, I can ask her, hold on.
No.
What do you mean you don't know? How do you not know?
Well, it's not my responsibility. The fact that the DA's computers can't talk to the Defense Department computers to get the information
Seems insane.
is stunning.
Yeah.
But do something about it. You know, in other words, okay.
I was gonna
okay,
say
do
that to you.
something about it.
I was actually gonna say that to you.
Okay.
Medication, drugs, everything.
The next thing that we are going to do is an exercise. We're going to interview, I'd like to have some volunteers actually, to interview a couple people that are coming into this room to be interviewed. Anyone want to volunteer? Kenny. Kenny? Oh, Kenny.
Don't throw Kenny under the bus.
You
just
want
because
to?
he's smart.
Sure.
Okay, great. Because I also need some other people to help volunteer too. I want to have at least two or three or four different
How about
people.
Brian? I'd like Brian to help me.
Okay, Brian, perfect.
Thanks, Kenny.
2 other people, please.
I think Brian should pick the next one.
We have 2 Joes to pick from everybody.
That's right. Joe, Gordon, perfect. The people that are going to be interviewed have not arrived yet.
I can talk about a couple other things if you want.
Okay, sure.
I missed a couple.
Sure.
Yeah, there were a couple things I want to talk about. They're a little bit unusual situations. Evan hit on it a little bit this morning. One of the worst, hardest interview situations I've had is a public hearing. Public hearings are tough because you're doing the interview in front of a crowd, and it gets really difficult. I did one right after I started the board. I was here 6 months, and we had one in Hawaii, and they've got this huge, enormous conference room. That's for the Korean Air accident. And they set it up so that the witness was a dot on the horizon. He was like the other side of the room. And you're talking to this, the voice is coming out of the ceiling. You're not listening to them. They're not talking to you. They're talking to the microphone. They were doing dual translation as a Korean victim, so they had simultaneous translation going on. When you're interviewing the person in public like that, you're also getting questions from the tech panel. There's a technical panel who's also, they have a LAN set up and they're sending chat messages back and forth, questions on it. And you'll get questions from people that will say things like, ask him this. Well, while you're reading that, the witness is answering the question you just asked. You've got another one on your list you want to ask, but sometimes they've already answered it, so you don't want to sound stupid and ask them again because you were paying attention to something else. So it's quite useful to have a wingman. We usually have 2 people sitting there. One of them's kind of fielding the questions off the panel and trying to get that going and talking in your ear. And it's a very confusing, difficult, real-time thing. So those are ones where you really need to be prepped for. If you get pulled into a public hearing and have to do questioning, you got to be ready because it's very difficult to keep sounding like you know what's going on. There's a lot of inputs all at once. You're not just doing one-on-one with this person. And sometimes they'll extend an answer and they'll answer a question you haven't asked yet because they kind of see it coming. Well, 3 questions later, you ask the same question, you sound like a dope. Because the whole crowd knows you already answered it and you're asking it again. It's like you're not paying attention or what? So it's not a good thing to do. The other thing was, Evan, sometimes these witnesses are really under a lot of pressure, even things you may not be aware of. You guys hear about the controller at National Tower that fell asleep? Yeah, most people heard of that one. Yeah, we interviewed him. Evan and I interviewed him. And when we talked to that guy, absolutely the salt of the earth. He's like your middle-aged dad type. He didn't come to work with a teddy bear pillow. It was his 4th midnight shift in a row. He's 46 years old. Working mids is not good for you. So he came in on a midnight shift. His sleep was disrupted that day. He has a whole pattern he goes through to try to get sleep in the morning, and then he takes care of his kid at night and stuff. Well, that all got disrupted. He came to work on less sleep than he normally had, and he fell asleep in a chair. Stuff happens. So he kind of dozed off. He was horrified, absolutely horrified. So we're interviewing him, and you could tell he felt terrible. Well, we started talking to the guy, and he said, he got so much publicity that while we were talking to him, we started describing what had been going on. He said, the press found out where he lived. And he lives in Arlington, not very far away. camera crews in his front yard, they're sticking cameras in his windows, and he said, I was trying to ignore all the press coverage. I wasn't watching TV, I wasn't doing anything. But he said, I did pull up the Channel 7 website one day, and there were 3 pictures on the front page. Mo Markadafi, some child molester, and me. So that was kind of the milieu he was living in at that point. And we're in there interviewing the poor guy, which is like, so he was very good about it, he was very nice. But, sometimes these people are really, there's a lot of stuff going on around them, and if they've been involved in something where they maybe actively did something that caused somebody to die or whatever, a lot of stress, and you have to be sensitive to that when you talk to them, because you can really cause a lot of issues. I accidentally set a guy off once because he had a mid-air collision, and I asked him if he wanted to see the radar data at the end of the interview, because I had the printout of what was there. And he said, yeah. Well, I showed it to him, and showed the 2 airplanes, running into each other. Well, mentally, he talked himself into thinking one of them wasn't on the display. And as soon as I showed him that it was, he broke into tears. And he felt horrible. Note to self, don't do that again. Because I didn't want to set him off. That wasn't the idea. I said, would you like some more factual information about the case, is what I was thinking. And when he found out it was a wild variance with his own mental idea of what had happened, blew him up. So there's a lot of things like that where you can just inadvertently trip somebody because you don't really know what's going on in their head. It's very, very hard to recognize that when it's happening. But usually if I've got somebody I expect may have that kind of thing going on, I always tell them up front, like, if you need to take a break, stop at any point, just let me know. We can take a break, we can take a few minutes and come back later. So you got a lot of that stuff going on as well. So that's it.
Okay, great. Well, listen, I want to tell you a little bit about this interview for those of you that are going to be interviewing. Now, the rest of the class obviously can't actively participate in this interview, but what I'd like you to do is think about the things that you've learned today and jot down if you see something or hear something, that you think should have been asked a certain way. What we're going to do is bring in these 2 people that were involved in this accident, and I'll give you the summary of this accident. It was a train accident. It occurred on May 8th, 2011 at 8:32 a.m. At the Port Authority Trans-Hudson Corporation, which is PATH. It was train 820. It had 7 multiple unit electric locomotives and was en route to the platform in Hoboken Station, Hoboken, New Jersey, on track 2 to offload passengers. When it arrived at the station, it struck the bumping post at the end of the track. There were 70 passengers on board the train. As a result of the collision, 30 passengers, the engineer, the conductor, were transported to local hospitals with no life-threatening injuries. 5 injured persons refused medical attention. The estimated damage of this train was $352,617. We're going to be bringing in the conductor of the train and his representative. Obviously, they haven't arrived yet. I want to videotape it, and what we'll do then is after you 3 have conducted this interview, I'd like one of you to be the IIC. Why don't you be that, Kenneth?
Gee, thanks.
Sure. And I'd like the other 2 of you to be your group members, okay? And you're going to interview them when they get here, and we'll go from there, okay?
Too bad I volunteered you.